if you can't see my screen or anything comes up. I hope you guys are having a beautiful night. And we're going to just start in with, I'm going to just introduce myself for those of you that maybe don't know me as well or don't really understand or know like my background or anything like that. So my name is Abigail Barella, and I started Sparkle and Shine Guidance in 2013, and I am very passionate about the idea of empowering others through education, but also through just getting to know our soul. And it's such, to me, like half of the time when I'm talking about these topics, I have to like take myself back to the start and like when I started learning about these things, because now where I'm at now, it's like so clear to me that it's sometimes hard to even talk about the soul, because to me that's like all there is really. Like that's all that really matters. But, you know, I think back to just starting to learn some of these topics, and I've been studying this for about 18 years on and off. And this hasn't been, you know, I didn't learn about astrology when I was 18 or 19 and say, this is what I'm going to do. I started learning about it about, I think I was 19. And, you know, before that time, just, you know, I had the kind of mother that just always had books around and always had more esoteric information around. My aunt, I remember her, like, you know, a lot of the games that we played were very intuitive. And I remember her reading our palms and teaching us to read palms. And so we had this kind of upbringing that was open to that. But I never actually thought, because of the societal programming, I never thought that it was something I could actually make a career out of. I was determined that I was going to be you know, a Jungian psychologist, which is interesting because that is who I draw a lot of the inspiration from astrology, and how he was able to incorporate a lot of that into his works and be accepted at a more, on a more masculine level, on a more societally accepting level. And what I feel like right now, though, is that what's being asked of a lot of us is that we step into not really caring what other people think and just doing what works, and not being so concerned about how it appears to this idea of them or they, because that's an illusion. And so, so long story short is I actually came back to astrology. So I had learned, I was reading charts for pretty much like everyone for free, which is so, now I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do that. It was such like, I spent so much time and energy doing that. And I would do it I was a doula. So I would do it for my doula clients. I was a nanny. I would do it for my, you know, the people I nannied for, and they were all just like blown away. But again, I would just like, yeah, but I don't know. And then I trained for one of my teachers that did energy work. I trained with her, and then that group all found out that I was into astrology. So then they would start asking me questions, and then I started reading for them. And then everybody's like, okay, you got to just do this, you know, and it's like so obvious to everybody else, right? So it's one of those things that like some people just have a knack for learning and understanding symbols. And we have brains that are set up for that. So if you're someone who has a brain like that, it's just really good to just engage it and like know that there's nothing wrong with you. You might just be, you know, reading symbols differently than other people. And that is the thing that's different about the archetype of the astrologer, or the archetype. It's actually, you know, math. A lot of mathematicians in the history of astrology were the ones that developed astrology. So I'm not going to talk too much more about that. But I do want to tell you one funny thing is that when I knew astrology was a real thing I knew it was a real thing for a while, but when I was 25, I had my first baby, and I was pregnant. I was really pregnant, and went into labor, and I was like, oh, I'm a day early. No, like I had a plan that I was going to go into labor on the 23rd because this baby's a Libra, and it was still Virgo time. And so then 24 hours later, I looked at my midwife and I'm like, she's waiting, isn't she? And she was like, I think so. And it was literally, my first daughter was born 5 minutes after it all changed into Libra. So I knew the baby wasn't a Virgo sun, but so my daughter is Libra sun, Libra moon. She was born on a new moon eclipse, and I was too, and we were both born on Fridays. So if that's not, a lot of the time with astrology, there is a lineage line. There is like the charts match in some weird way. Like you'll find synchronicities in the charts. And so that's mine with her. But anyway, I just want to tell you the story because there was like no doubt in my mind. I was just like, okay, yeah, this is a real thing here. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about the Gemini new moon. And I wanted to start with just talking about new moons in general. How do I do this? So what is a new moon? This is something that is so basic, but so hard to comprehend unless you can actually envision the sky. So if we can envision the sky for a minute, we will understand that the moon moves faster than the sun. And each zodiac sign that the sun is in, so I call those seasons, like the Gemini season to me is like a 28-day cycle that we are in where the sun is in Gemini. So when the sun is in Gemini and the moon moves faster, we're going to get a full moon, which is when the sun and the moon are opposite of each other. So the moon moves quicker and it moves around and it comes and it opposes the sun. When that happens, it's going to be in the opposite sign because it's opposing. And so it's in Sagittarius. So we just had a full moon in Sagittarius. Then the moon keeps moving. The sun's moving too. It's just moving slower. The moon moves out of sign every 2 days. The sun, as we know, is in there about 30 days, 28 days, 30 days because there's 30 degrees. So the moon's moving around, and when it comes back around to the same degree that the sun is in, that's when we get the new moon. And so each time we're in, like the sun is in Gemini, we're going to get a new moon in Gemini because the sun and the moon will be in the same degree, and it has to be that the sun is in Gemini because the sun is in Gemini for the whole time that we're in that season. I hope that makes sense. So when the sun is in Gemini, we're going to have a new moon in Gemini. When the sun is in Cancer, we're going to have a new moon in Cancer. And when the sun is in Cancer, when we get to the full moon, it will likely be in Capricorn. Now, there are times where it gets a little bit wonky, but for like 99.9% of the time, that is completely accurate. Okay, so that's the story there. So what this new moon is the sun and the moon meeting in the same degree of the zodiac. And the dark of the moon represents a more internal time. So at the full moon, things come into consciousness around, it's more external. And then because if you ever think about like when the full moon is happening, there's more people outside, there tends to be just more things happening. And at the new moon, it's very quiet. Like, I don't know if you guys are feeling that today, but it's kind of sleepy, quiet feeling. Generally, it is a time where we will be processing a lot more internally. And when the new moon is happening, and it's also the time traditionally when women in their cycle, that is like the beginning of the cycle, or, we come to the very end and then we start a new cycle. So I didn't mention this, but also with the supermoon, what a supermoon is when the moon is just closer in its orbit to the earth. So that's something to just be aware of. We're going to have more of an influence. And if you got a chance to read my blog post today, or if you can, I just talked about how it affects the tides, and then also like the tide within us more because it's closer. The pole is closer on the earth. So in general, females are more linked to the moon because we have the moon cycle, and we feel this pole more substantially typically. Now, of course, there's feminine men out there that are going to feel it too. And, everyone feels it, but just to be aware that if you're feeling it more than, the men in your life are around you, that's why. So it's a time for getting clear on your intentions and where you want to start fresh, where you're ready to finally just release and start fresh. And so this is a good time to look into that. When the moon is in Gemini, this is a kind of a different energy than if, say, you know, the Taurus new moon. Taurus new moon and Gemini new moon are so different. And what's different about it is that Gemini is mercurial, very quick thinking, intelligent, and like you sometimes you can outwit your own self, you know, and you're like, what the heck just happened there? So when the moon is in Gemini, or if you have your moon in Gemini, my son has his moon in Gemini, and, you know, things can change really quickly for him and for Gemini moons, because they're not even really aware that it's happening, but at an emotional level, because the moon represents our internal emotional level, or our internal emotional landscape or part of us, then we are going to, you know, he's changing a lot. Sometimes he doesn't even know what he needs. And so the best thing to do is to incorporate writing, speaking, communicating, and really talking about how you're doing emotionally, talking about what's changing for you, where you're at, that kind of thing is going to be really helpful to moving forward. So if we decide to see the positive, we can notice where we're getting taught, where we're getting our opportunities for learning from close friendships, siblings, communication issues. This is, I can't tell you how many people today, like after I did my live, were like messaging me like, yeah, I have this happening. And, you know, so it's very awake and alive and present. These archetypes, like the archetype of Gemini, it is not something that is imagined or is a myth, you know, it's very much just lives in us somewhere. So we want to know where this lives in us. So one thing to do to understand that is to understand where this new moon is happening in your chart. And there are 12 houses in astrology, and each of those houses represent a different area of life. And then we have to look at too, like, so is the Gemini house for you, is it above the horizon or is it below the horizon? So let me show you an example, and please tell me if you can't see this or if you can. So let's see, I want to go to Astro. I want this to be bigger, and hopefully you guys can see this. And okay, so so if you look at, okay, so this chart, this is a chart of like right now. So in this time of day, okay, so if a baby was born in, and so I want to look at too, like, so this is in Portland, Oregon. So if a baby was born, and there is probably a baby being born right this moment, so blessings on you, baby. This is their chart, okay? So the birth chart is literally just a snapshot of the sky up there at the time of birth, right? So for this baby, this child, this human, the soul, they are going to have Gemini in their 7th house of relationships, which is so interesting after just like talking about, you know, and I was talking about this coming up for a lot of people. And with that being said, this is above the horizon. So the horizon line is right here. If we are looking out at the sky, this is because it's later in the day. This is where the sun is setting, okay? So this is the descendant point when the sun is setting in the sky. And this is the rising point where the sun is rising in the sky. And it's going to be the, you know, opposite here. So we've got right now in this time, and this was obviously, actually, why is it ahead? That's interesting. Anyway, oh, it adjusted for itself. Okay, so this is the opposite. So we have Taurus right here, and then we have Scorpio, okay? So this would be a Scorpio rising person. And if this baby was born in the morning time of today, then he would be a Gemini rising, because Gemini would be here. Okay, so I'm sharing way too much. Let me back it up. So they're above the horizon is what's in the sky out. Like if you looked up in the sky, that's what's there. Below the horizon is what's underneath the earth, so we can't see it, okay? So you want to know where Gemini is in your chart, and then is it above the horizon or below the horizon? If it's below the horizon, it's going to be more interactions that are internal, more interactions that are private, that are self-development that are maybe taking even more space or more stepping into solitude a little bit more. And if it's above the horizon, you might notice, like, for instance, if this was an adult person's chart, okay, they would definitely be noticing some relationship stuff coming up, maybe some new aspects of the relationship that they're able to celebrate together, or maybe they would meet someone new, or maybe they, you know, whatever. But it's going to be more around that, those topics are going to be up because that's the area of life where this is happening, okay? So I will do a house by house for you guys, but I just wanted to kind of just explain just a little bit of something else because I know that people have a lot of questions about that, and I don't know if that was completely clear, but you want to know where Gemini is. So this is what Gemini glyph looks like, and it's okay if you don't have your chart out right now. It's totally fine because you're going to have a recording of this, so you can skip ahead and you can come to this spot. And if you're listening to this after today, like if you're listening to a recording of this, then you might want to pause it and go get your chart and then come back. So here's Gemini in your chart, and you want to know where that is, okay? So we're going to do a house by house. So when we're looking at, and I'm actually going to go back, well, yeah. How do I go back to where I was? Okay, so let's do a house by house for this Gemini new moon. So the Gemini new moon is a fresh start and a fresh outlook on where you want to set intention. So if it's happening in your first house, or it's on your rising, or it's in your first house, this is opportunities to plant new seeds and set new intention around how you want to be identified as, who you are, who you want to be identified as, how you want to be seen. There might be changes or shifts to your identity. Like for instance, today, even though I don't have this placement, like I had the glimpse of like wanting to cut off all my hair, you know, like something like that, a big haircut, or something that shifts your identity a little bit, maybe a new car, you know, something. And being aware of where you can make space and room to do some self-development. So you might want to take a new class, or you might want to read a new book or something, because this is your identity, okay? So new opportunities for that, and really making space for that in your life. Second house, if this new moon's happening in your second house, this is your house of possessions, and it's your house of security and boundaries. And so when the new moon is happening there, this is an opportunity for you to look at times where you've let people cross boundaries with you, or where you've given too much energetically, or where you have given too much financially, or where you'd like to save your pennies. Gemini in the second house can be an overspender and just want to have fun. And so this might be an opportunity for you to really scale back and set new intention around wanting to be more financially secure, wanting to have more of a boundary for yourself around spending, and boundary for yourself around your time. Time is energy, right? And that's why, like, you know, this is what I'm getting to, is like, I can't do all these free classes, right? So I'm doing my astrology school because it's like, time is energy, and you know, we can only do so much. So this might be a time for you to really look at that, where you're spending your time, and really scale back, okay? Third house, communication. It is Gemini's house. And so it's a Mercury ruled house. You're having a new moon in Gemini there. It's like perfectly placed. And yet you really need to take care of your nervous system this week. And also you're setting your opportunities to set new intention and make space in your life for creating more of, you probably are just a great communicator. You probably are someone who likes to speak a lot. So it's definitely a time for you to look at where you could step into that more, or step into writing, speaking, communicating in your work, or in your community life. Okay, so that's new intentions for that. Fourth house, if you have Gemini in the fourth house, this, you know, can be a tricky placement because Gemini is so busy and out in the world, and the fourth house is the house of home. So it can mean someone who, you know, has a harder time managing the home, or doesn't want to be at home, or maybe, you know, maybe there's someone who's learned how to incorporate it and have house parties and house dinner parties and things like that. But this is the opportunity maybe for you to do some of that, or to do some work at home, to figure out ways to make yourself feel more at home with others and within your actual physical home. So this is the opportunity for that. Fifth house is the house of creativity. It's the house of the muse. It's the house of creation. And so you want to set intention around those topics and creating space in your life for you to let things flow through. Probably you're a pretty good writer or a pretty good creator. And so this is an opportunity for you to make more space in your life for that. Sixth house, if you have Gemini in the sixth house, another really important to take care of your nervous system this week. Take care of your physical health, drink enough water, get enough food. Those kind of things are going to be really vital this week. And setting intention. You might decide you're going to, you know, build up your diet in terms of like more clean eating, or you're going to start walking. I think walking is such a positive thing for this placement, to just like keep yourself moving and processing. And, you know, you might even be someone who walks every day and talks on the phone to your bestie or something, like just keep the energy moving. If you have Gemini in the seventh house, this is that chart. It's like the house of relationships. And so it's the need and desire to have a lot of communication in your relationship. You might decide that this is a good time to invest in some therapy for your relationship, or to do something fun together, have a hobby that you do together. Gemini likes to have fun. And so you definitely want to have that aspect influence this week, and stepping into more of that fun and create space for fun relationship date nights and stuff. This is the time for it. So if you have Gemini in the eighth house, Gemini in the eighth house is the house of transformation. It's the house of the like other people. So the second house is like your security, your money, and the eighth house is other people's money, other people's security, your transformation through seeing that, and having to interact with that, and having to like get to new places with that. So if you have Gemini new moon happening here, this is the opportunity to really bring things to consciousness that are deep under the surface around fears and around lack mentality, and bringing in this positive new ideas around money, and ideas around transformation, and ideas around energy and who you are as a magical maker. If you have Gemini in your ninth house, Gemini new moon happening in your ninth house, this is the house of Sag. It's opposite the third house, which is the house of Gemini. And so it's the ability to bring the finite, the inner to the outer. And so this is the natural placement for teachers. So this new moon might be an opportunity to, like, you know, begin starting to teach something, begin starting to understand like your talents and your gifts in processing information, taking a book and being able to synthesize it, that kind of thing. And so you might want to set intention around that. If you have Gemini in your 10th house, this is the house of work in the world. It depends how close it is to your midheaven in terms of how important this is in terms of your vocation. But this is the opportunity to set new intention and really fly high with your work in the world, and really move some energy in terms of intention setting and manifestation. If you have Gemini in the 11th house is community. It's another air house. And so there's this influence of just intelligence and kind of being more aware of where you've been denying or not honoring your own intelligence, even if it doesn't fit into mainstream. So this is the opportunity to really honor yourself and move forward in terms of community and reaching out and being honored by the community. If you have Gemini in the 12th house, new moon, this is a time for you to really refresh and really reset your belief systems and your knowledge. And there's this, the 12th house is the house of the unseen. And so it's like honoring the gifts and talents that you have that nobody else can see, and really be aware of your spiritual connection through words, through poetry, through writing. And so this is the house of like, all of that Neptunian influence brings, with Mercury and Neptune together, it's just a powerful artist in terms of writing especially, but also speaking. So using that this month and setting intention. Okay, so I just wanted to go through all that. Sorry that took a while. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Sparkle and Shine Astrology School, and then we're going to end with our meditation. So this is a new program. It's super exciting to me to take basically like on and off 18 years of study, of self-study, of learning with teachers, of investing in my own study and all that, and take it and package it into 12 modules. They're going to be released each week. It starts off with the very basics. And honestly, for me, even to go back and teach the very basics, it's been like so good for me, because it's really in those basics that you get. They're like the building blocks for everything. So we really spend a lot of time on the basics. And then each week it builds on. We go through aspects, we go through houses, we go through eclipses, we go through Chiron and all the asteroids, and these archetypes and how they play into our lives. You have access to me each week, weekly check-ins with me, so through email. So questions that come up from the lecture, we're checking in on a group message to make sure you understand the information. 2 private coaching calls, which are huge for synthesizing the information, because you can do an email check-in, you can even do like a group class, but when you're actually getting private coaching, it's a much different. This is the one thing that I honestly didn't get in my training that I feel like would have really taken those 18 years and made them a lot shorter, because I had to just figure everything out on my own, in terms of like, even if I was like taking a class, like I didn't have access to the teacher in this way. And so I really wanted to make that available to people. And then worksheets, recommendations for reading materials, learning materials. This class after the 21st will be $1,800. It'll be 4 payments of $450. I feel completely confident in that, because you will basically be a professional astrologer. You're going to get all the information, all the training, all the coaching with me to really set you off and reading other people's charts and charging for it. However, I'm doing this crazy thing where, because it's new and I want feedback and I want it to work and I want it to be this beautiful experience for everybody, if you register before the 21st, it's $997, which is 4 payments of $250 that can be split up monthly. So do 4 monthly payments. The other crazy thing I'm doing is, for the next 24 hours, if you register, you will also get a full chart reading with me and another coaching session. So I'm adding those 2 on for people who are listening to this and who are committed to wanting to learn and wanting to get a lot of bang for their buck. And also it's going to help me, because you guys are my first students. Whoever decides to take this opportunity and step into their power are going to be my first students. And I want feedback, and I want more communication. And I also want you to have all the access to the material. So that's what I'm doing. I'm super excited. I can't tell you how big of a leap this is for me, because yeah, I just have a lot of Cancer placements that make me really question my capabilities in teaching this. And so this is a huge, and I'm also dyslexic. So this is a huge step for me. And I'm really thankful to have such an awesome community that not only is excited for me, but also is interested in learning from me and see my value as a teacher and see my value as someone that can translate this information into usable language, usable skills. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm super excited. It's about a 2 to 3 hour commitment a week. And so it runs for 12 weeks. However, not everybody has to start at the same time. We will be doing weekly check-ins, but that doesn't mean you all have to start at the same time. So it really is, each module will be released each week starting on the 21st. So however you want to do that, but honestly, you'll have access to that video whenever you started. So if you decided to start after or even before, you will have access to that video. So the first one to start you off. Okay, I think I covered everything that I wanted to. And yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just say why this is a powerful time to study astrology or energy work or anything metaphysical. Why it's such a powerful time is that this Jupiter in Scorpio is time limited. We've had it since November, and we will have it until this coming fall. And we also have Mars going retrograde, and this is a really time for self-study to move you forward, but in this way that it really is going to take your inner work. And so it's a beautiful time. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Thank you. I love your heart too that you're able to do that. So Michelle says, your passion for what you do is so incredible, incredibly contagious, Abby. This class is going to be so amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, and oh yeah, so all of these things are happening astrologically that are really asking. I mean, it's not just the women. I see so many men stepping into this role as well, but for whatever reason, it definitely is the feminine, you know, it's more of the feminine aspects, even, and I'm noticing it in like a lot of my male friends, that they're just like really interested in what I do, and they don't know how to really access it. But I'm trying to like show them like, you could do this too, you know? And it's like, it's really interesting because I think for men, it's a lot harder to like understand that it is something that they could actually learn on their own. But I feel like for women, we're really kind of taking this on, and I'm really excited to see like what the next few years unfolds for all of just these amazing women who are stepping into their power and stepping into what they know to be true, what they know is good medicine to share. Okay, so I wanted to end